You say you want control over your life, but look closer. Your life only moves when your actions move, and your actions only move when you feel like it. That means you are not in control. Your moods are. Your energy is. Your circumstances are. That is not freedom. That is dependence. Freedom is not having more options. It is not having fewer rules. Freedom is being able to decide and have your actions obey that decision. If you cannot control what you do today, you cannot control where your life goes tomorrow. Control of life always begins with control of behavior. There is no other starting point. Here is the truth most people avoid. Discipline is not the opposite of freedom. Discipline is what creates it. Without discipline, your actions are inconsistent. Without consistent action, your life drifts. You may feel busy, you may feel hopeful, but you are not in command. And when you are not in command of your actions, something else always takes over. Discipline is not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is a system, a daily execution system that forces action. Remember, especially when you do not feel like it, especially with small, boring, unglamorous tasks. If you cannot control yourself there, you will never control anything that matters. You already know what you should be doing. Knowledge is not your problem. Feelings are. You wait until you feel ready. You wait until conditions improve. And every time you wait, you teach yourself that your decisions are optional. Over time, you lose trust in your own word. And when you cannot trust yourself, you cannot run your life. This book exists for one purpose: to give you control back, not by changing how you feel, but by changing what you do. When your actions become reliable, your life becomes stable. When your behavior is under control, freedom appears as a consequence. If you are looking for comfort, stop here. If you want control and the freedom that comes from it, keep listening. Chapter 1. The easy road is the hardest road. There is no shortcut. That is the truth. Most people spend their lives trying to escape. The easy road looks harmless at first. It promises comfort. It promises relief. It promises that you can rest now and deal with the hard parts later. But later always comes. And when it does, it comes with interest. Every time you choose what is easy today, you are not removing difficulty from your life. You are postponing it. You are pushing it forward. You are letting it grow heavier in the background. The easy road never erases the cost. It only delays the bill. And the bill always arrives. Avoiding what is hard does not make life lighter. It makes it weaker. It trains you to believe that discomfort is something to be escaped instead of faced. It trains your mind to seek relief instead of control. Over time, that habit creates chaos. You feel scattered. You feel unstable. You feel like your life is constantly slipping out of your hands. Not because life is unfair, but because you keep choosing ease over responsibility. The easy road today always sends the invoice tomorrow. And tomorrow, you pay with your confidence, your discipline, and your sense of control. You already know what needs to be done. That is not your problem. You know the task. You know the habit. You know the conversation you are avoiding. You know the work you keep pushing back. The problem is not knowledge. The problem is timing. You only act when it feels right, when you have energy, when you are in the mood, when the conditions feel comfortable, and when they do not. You wait. You delay. You negotiate. The hard task gets postponed. A small promise to yourself gets broken, then another, slowly. quietly. Your personal credibility erodes, not in one dramatic collapse, but in small, invisible losses. This is not life making you weak. This is you becoming weaker every time you refuse to do what you already know you should do. There is no better moment coming. There is no future version of the day that will magically feel easier. There is no morning where you will wake up with unlimited energy and perfect motivation. That moment does not exist. Feelings are unstable by nature. They rise and fall without asking for your permission. They have no obligation to support your responsibilities. Waiting until it feels easy is not patience. It is legalized procrastination. And procrastination teaches your brain a dangerous lesson. It teaches your brain that your words do not matter, that your decisions are optional, that your commitments are flexible. When you wait for the right feeling, you are training your mind to treat your promises like noise. If you want freedom, you must choose the hard thing first. That is the only rule. Freedom does not come from doing whatever feels good. Freedom comes from being able to decide and then act. Regardless of how you feel, discipline creates control. Control creates freedom, not freedom from work, but freedom from weakness. You do not do hard things to prove strength to the world. You do hard things to maintain authority over your own behavior. When you do the right thing you already decided to do, even when you do not want to, you are taking control. When your behavior is under your control, nothing outside of you owns you. That is what real freedom looks like. Your circumstances are not in charge. Your emotions are not in charge. Other people are not in charge. Only you decide whether the hard task gets done or avoided. Every excuse you make hands control to something you do not command. Blame is not just a story, it is a transfer of power. The moment you say it is because of the situation, the mood, or someone else. You step out of the driver's seat. The moment you stop blaming, you take your power back. Responsibility is not a burden, it is leverage. Ownership is how control returns to you. This chapter does not ask you to become extreme. It asks you to become honest. Today, choose one thing you have been avoiding because it is hard. Not the most impressive thing, not the most strategic thing, just the thing you keep pushing away. Do not optimize, do not prepare, do not wait until later. Do the smallest possible version of it today, right now. Do not ask yourself if you feel like it. Do not check your mood. One question only. Does this need to be done? If the answer is yes, action must follow. No debate. No delay. This is how discipline begins. Not with intensity, with compliance. You do the hard thing even when it is uncomfortable. You keep a small promise to yourself. That single act restores something important. It restores trust. Trust in your own word. Trust that when you decide, action happens from this moment forward. Stop searching for the easy road. Choose the hard one. It is not the path of punishment. It is the path of control, and control is the doorway to real freedom. Chapter 2. Motivation is a liar. Motivation is a feeling. That is the first truth you need to face. A feeling, by definition, comes and goes. It rises without warning. It disappears without apology. And yet, you have been treating this unstable thing as if it were a reliable authority. You wait for it. You ask for its permission. You let it decide whether action happens or not. That is why your behavior is inconsistent. That is why your progress is fragile. When motivation is in charge, your life runs on mood, and moods do not build anything that lasts. There is no feeling on this planet that has a duty to help you fulfill your responsibilities. None. Your body does not owe you energy. Your mind does not owe you clarity. Your emotions do not owe you cooperation. They are not employees working for your goals. They are variables, unstable ones. The moment you expect them to show up on schedule, you hand over control of your behavior to the most unreliable system you could choose. Waiting for motivation is not patience, it is surrender. Be honest about how this plays out. You already know what needs to be done. That has never been the problem. The problem is that you only act when the conditions feel right, when you feel comfortable, when you feel inspired, when you feel rested enough. On days when motivation shows up, you move. On days when it does not, you disappear. Nothing dramatic. You just delay. You postpone. You tell yourself you will do it later. And later becomes a habit, a quiet one, a dangerous one. Every time you say you will act and you do not. Something breaks inside you, not loudly, not all at once. It breaks in small, invisible pieces. Your brain starts collecting data. It learns a simple rule: your words are optional. Your promises are flexible. Your decisions depend on how you feel. Over time, this becomes your identity. Someone who knows what to do but cannot be trusted to do it, not by others, and eventually, not by yourself. This is how personal credibility erodes, not through big failures, but through small daily excuses that feel reasonable in the moment. I am tired. I am not in the right headspace. I will do it properly tomorrow. Each excuse sounds harmless. Together, they train your nervous system to associate responsibility with negotiation. And once responsibility becomes negotiable, discipline collapses. You need to kill a very specific illusion right now. There is no such thing as being motivated enough. That state does not exist. Motivation does not warm up before work. It does not volunteer to help with difficult tasks. It does not arrive early and stay late. If you wait to feel ready, you will wait forever. People who live disciplined lives are not people who feel better than you. They are people who removed feelings from the decision-making process. Waiting until you feel good to act is not self-care. It is legalized procrastination. And procrastination that feels justified is the most dangerous kind. Because it does not create urgency, it creates permission. Permission to delay. Permission to break promises. Permission to repeat the pattern tomorrow. Once your brain accepts that permission, it will use it again and again and again. Here is the rule that changes everything. Discipline does not ask how you feel. Discipline does not negotiate. Discipline does not wait for alignment. Discipline is a command, a decision that has already been made. When discipline is in place, action happens whether you feel like it or not. That is not cruelty. That is clarity. There is a clean difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation requires emotion. Discipline requires a decision. Motivation fluctuates. Discipline stays. Motivation asks, "Do I want to?" Discipline asks, "Does this need to be done?" When you cut emotion out of that equation, behavior stabilizes. And when behavior stabilizes, control returns. Every time you say, "I don't have motivation," what you are really saying is, "I am letting my feelings decide for me." That is not a lack of energy. That is a transfer of authority. You are handing the steering wheel to something that cannot drive. when emotions run your actions. You are not in control of your life. You are reacting to it. Ownership begins here, not later, not when things feel easier, right here. You are not failing because motivation is missing. You are failing because you allow the absence of motivation to stop you. That is a choice, whether you admit it or not. Responsibility does not disappear when feelings are low. The task is still yours. The outcome is still yours. The consequences are still yours. From this point on, the rule is simple. Stop asking yourself whether you feel like doing something. That question is banned. It leads nowhere. Replace it with one question only: does this need to be done? If the answer is yes, action begins immediately, not after preparation, not after optimization. Within 60 seconds, the longer you wait, the more space you give emotion to interfere. Judge your days by one metric only. Did you do what you said you would do? Not how you felt, not how motivated you were. Results come later. Credibility comes first. Discipline is not built by impressive actions. It is built by consistent ones. There is one more rule that locks this in. The first task of your day must be small, ordinary, unimpressive, something your ego would rather skip, not because it produces results, but because it produces discipline. Small tasks are not beneath you. They are the foundation. When you avoid small work, you are not aiming higher. You are avoiding accountability. Do not upgrade the task to make it feel meaningful. Do not wait until it feels worthy of your effort. The smaller and more boring it is, the more important it becomes. Doing small work without recognition trains your system to act without emotional reward. That is real discipline. People who still rely on motivation choose tasks that feel exciting. People who are disciplined do what needs to be done, including the parts no one cares about. That is the difference. One is chasing feeling. The other is building control. You do not need motivation. You do not need confidence. You do not need the right mood. You need a decision that does not expire when discomfort appears. From now on, when something needs to be done, it gets done, not because you feel ready, but because you decided. No emotion required, no inspiration needed, just action. Chapter 3. Nobody is responsible for understanding you. Nobody is responsible for understanding you. No one owes you clarity. No one owes you approval. No one needs to see your effort, your struggle, or your intention. This is not cruelty. This is the default state of adult life. The world does not pause to decode your motives. It does not slow down to validate your reasons. It moves forward, indifferent, and it responds only to what actually happens. If this truth feels uncomfortable, good. It means you are finally facing reality instead of negotiating with it. Most people do not stay stuck because they are weak. They stay stuck because they are waiting. Waiting to be understood, waiting to be supported, waiting for someone to say, "You're right. You deserve this. You should go for it." That waiting looks harmless, but it is one of the most destructive delays you can train into yourself. Every time you wait for understanding, action is postponed. Every time action is postponed, a promise is suspended. And every suspended promise quietly lowers your personal credibility. You may not notice it in one day, but your mind does. Your mind keeps score. It learns that your words are conditional. It learns that you move only when the environment cooperates. Over time, that lesson hardens into identity. You become someone who needs permission to act. There is a popular illusion that needs to be destroyed. The illusion says that once people understand you, things will get easier, that once you feel supported, disciplined action will flow naturally, that if someone just stood on your side, you would finally show up consistently. This is false. Being understood does not produce action. Being encouraged does not replace discipline. Approval has never carried anyone through hard, repetitive work. In fact, the need for understanding is often just procrastination wearing a clean mask. It feels reasonable, it feels justified, but it still delays the only thing that matters: execution. Waiting to be understood is legalized hesitation. It gives your mind a respectable excuse to stand still. I'll start when they get it. I'll go all in when someone believes in me. I'll commit when I'm no longer alone in this. Each of these thoughts transfers control away from you. Each one teaches your brain that action depends on external alignment. And once action depends on something outside of you, you are no longer in control of your life. Mature people do not require an audience. They do not explain their standards. They do not argue for their discipline. They do not run presentations on why their path makes sense. They decide, and then they act. The work happens whether anyone understands it or not. The commitment stands whether anyone agrees or not. Action does not need to be understood. It only needs to be executed. When you stop being understood, life often gives you something else instead. It gives you smaller tasks, quieter roles, work that no one praises, work that feels beneath your potential. This is not punishment. This is a test of humility. This is where most people fail. They interpret the lack of recognition as injustice. They interpret small tasks as disrespect. And instead of doing the work, they go looking for validation. They explain. They justify. They talk about what they are capable of instead of proving what they can sustain. Here is how the mechanism actually works. When no one sees you handle small work consistently, your mind has no data to trust you with bigger responsibility. Trust is not built through intention. It is built through evidence, silent, boring, repetitive evidence, people who cannot tolerate small. Unseen work will always drift back towards seeking approval. People who keep working in silence build internal credibility. And internal credibility is the foundation of discipline. Every time you say, "They don't understand me," you are handing control to someone else. You are saying, without realizing it, that your action depends on their reaction. That is a dangerous habit. Agreement is not a requirement. Support is not a prerequisite. Understanding is not a condition. The task remains yours. The responsibility does not move just because someone disagrees or ignores you. This is where ownership becomes real, not when things are fair, not when people are encouraging, but when no one is watching, no one is clapping, and no one cares. If you can still act there, you are in control. If you cannot, then your discipline was never internal. It was rented from the environment. So here are the rules, and they are not suggestions. Stop explaining your plans. Stop narrating your effort. Stop announcing what you are trying to become. Do the work quietly until it is done. Choose one small task that no one values. Do it every day. Do it without recognition. Do it without commentary. Do not post it. Do not defend it. Do not seek reassurance. Let the repetition speak. Measure yourself by behavior, not perception. Did you show up? Did you complete the task? Did you keep the promise? That is the only score that matters. When you stop needing to be understood, you recover speed. When you stop needing approval, you recover control. When you stop waiting for permission, your actions finally belong to you. Nobody understanding you is not the problem. Not acting is the problem. Chapter 4. Discipline is a command. Discipline is not a feeling. Motivation is a feeling. Feelings rise and fall. They appear without warning and disappear just as fast. No feeling has any obligation to help you keep a promise. No emotion owes you cooperation. When your actions depend on how you feel, your behavior becomes unstable. And when your behavior is unstable, you cannot trust yourself. That is the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. If your actions only happen when you feel good, you are not in control. Something else is. And whatever controls your actions controls your life. You already know what needs to be done. That is not the problem. The problem is that you only act when the conditions feel right, when you feel rested, when your mood is decent, when the resistance is low. On the days you feel heavy, distracted, or irritated, the work gets postponed. One small delay turns into another. Tomorrow becomes permission. And every time you say tomorrow, your brain learns a dangerous lesson. It learns that your words are optional. It learns that your decisions are suggestions, not rules, over time. This erodes something far more important than productivity. It erodes your credibility with yourself. You do not lose control all at once. You lose it one broken promise at a time. Most people think they have a discipline problem. They do not. They have a permission problem. They have trained themselves to negotiate with their own rules. They allow emotions to vote on decisions that were already made. They treat discomfort as a veto. And every time they do that, discipline weakens, not because life is hard, but because they allow exceptions. They wait for a day when they feel ready. They wait for a moment when motivation shows up. They wait for things to feel easier. That day never comes. There is no ready state. There is no perfect energy level. Waiting for it is not patience. It is legalized delay. The most destructive illusion is the belief that discipline means forcing yourself when you feel strong. Real discipline begins when you feel weak, when you negotiate with your emotions. Discipline dies the moment you ask yourself whether you feel like doing the work. You have already handed control away. That is the moment the rule stops being a rule. It becomes a preference, and preferences are easy to ignore. Discipline cannot survive in an environment where everything is negotiable. Discipline is not a choice you make again and again. Discipline is a command you follow. A command does not ask for permission. A command does not check your mood. A command does not care whether today feels heavy or light. Once the decision is made, the action must happen. There is no such thing as trying to be disciplined. There is only obedience or violation. You either follow the rule or you break it. There is no middle ground. The more clearly you understand this, the simpler everything becomes. This is where responsibility returns to where it belongs. Not to circumstances, not to energy levels, not to your past. If you did not act, it is not because the day was hard. It is because you allowed yourself not to act. Every time you say, "I'm tired today," what you are really saying is, "I am granting myself an exception." And exceptions are expensive. They cost you trust. They cost you momentum. They cost you control. You do not fail because you lack energy. You fail because you do not enforce your own rules. Taking ownership here is not about blaming yourself emotionally. It is about reclaiming authority. When you stop pretending that feelings are in charge, you take your power back. You stop waiting to feel better. You stop explaining. You stop negotiating. You accept one simple rule once a task is decided. It must be executed. Whether you enjoy it or not is irrelevant. Whether the day feels smooth or heavy does not matter. The command stands. This does not mean doing everything all the time. Discipline is not chaos. Discipline is clarity. You do not need a long list. You need one non-negotiable daily action. One task that is small, clear, and measurable. Something that cannot hide behind complexity. Something you cannot rationalize away. Attach it to a fixed time, not a flexible window. A fixed time. When the time arrives, the action happens. No check-in with your mood. No internal conversation. You show up. You execute. You finish. And you stop. That is it. The rules are simple. Do not ask how you feel today. Do not adjust the schedule because your energy feels low. Do not postpone because the conditions are imperfect. You are not trying to impress yourself. You are training yourself. You are teaching your brain that your decisions are law. The action does not need to be heroic. It needs to be consistent. Completion matters more than intensity. Showing up matters more than feeling strong. This is how control is rebuilt, not through inspiration, but through enforcement. Every time the action happens on schedule, regardless of emotion, something shifts internally. Trust returns, quietly, without drama. You stop doubting yourself. You stop needing external pressure. You stop relying on motivation. You become someone who does what was decided. And that identity is powerful. Discipline does not remove effort from your life. It removes weakness. It removes the endless internal debate. It removes the exhausting question of whether today will be a good day or a bad one. When the rule is clear, the mind rests. There is nothing to decide. The work is done because it was decided before the emotions arrived. That is freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from chaos. Most people think freedom means doing what they want in the moment. That is not freedom. That is impulse. Real freedom is the ability to act according to your decisions, not your moods. When your behavior is stable, your life becomes stable. When your actions happen on command. External circumstances lose their grip on you. You are no longer dragged by how you feel or what happens around you. You move because you decided to move. This chapter is not about becoming more productive. It is about becoming reliable to yourself. When you keep small promises consistently, your self-respect grows, not because you achieved something big, but because you proved something fundamental. You proved that your word matters. You proved that discomfort does not get to decide. You proved that you are in charge. Discipline will not make life easy. It will make life clear. And clarity is strength. When you no longer depend on motivation, nothing can be taken away from you. When your actions are governed by command, not emotion. You stop being vulnerable to excuses. You stop being fragile. You stop collapsing on hard days. This is the rule going forward. Decide once. Execute daily. No negotiation. No mood check. No exception. Discipline is not there to make you feel better. It is there to make you free. And freedom begins the moment your actions obey your decisions, not your emotions. Chapter 5. Do small work. Rebuild self-respect. Big work does not build discipline. Big wins do not make you reliable. Big goals do not teach your mind to trust you. Small work does. Quiet work. Unimpressive work. The kind of work no one claps for. The kind of work you are tempted to skip because it feels beneath you. That is where discipline is actually built. That is where self-respect either returns or dies completely. You are not undisciplined because you lack ambition. You are undisciplined because you break small promises. Over and over again, you tell yourself you will do something simple, something easy, something that should take no effort at all. And then you don't do it, or you delay it, or you half do it. And nothing bad happens immediately. No one notices. No one calls you out. So you move on. But something does happen. Your mind takes notes. Your brain learns that your words are optional. It learns that you only act when the task feels important enough, exciting enough, rewarding enough. And every time that lesson is reinforced, your self-respect drops a little lower. Most people avoid small work for the same reason. It does not feel meaningful. It does not feel impressive. It does not give them a sense of progress. There is no visible payoff, no validation, no quick reward. So they chase important work instead. They wait for the task that feels worthy of their energy. They wait for the moment when the work feels significant. And when that moment does not come, they do nothing, or they stay busy without actually being reliable. They confuse activity with discipline. They confuse effort with integrity. Here is the truth you do not want to hear. Small work does not create achievement. It creates identity. It tells your nervous system who you are. Every time you do a small task exactly as you promised, you send one message to your brain. I am someone who keeps my word. Every time you skip it, you send the opposite message, and your brain believes actions, not intentions. It believes patterns, not motivation. That is why people who constantly talk about big plans often feel weak inside. They are not failing because they are incapable. They are failing because they cannot tolerate facing themselves at the smallest level. Doing small work is uncomfortable for the ego. There is nowhere to hide. You cannot pretend you are almost there. You cannot blame complexity. You cannot hide behind potential. You either did the task or you didn't. You either showed up or you didn't. That is why people avoid it. Not because it is hard, but because it is honest. Humility is not an attitude, it is behavior. Humility is doing work that feels beneath you without complaining. It is executing small tasks with precision when no one is watching. It is finishing boring responsibilities with the same seriousness you would give to a high-status goal. Discipline is not built at the top. It is built at the bottom, from the ground up, from repetition, from doing what you said you would do, even when it feels insignificant. If you cannot do small work well, you have no business talking about big work. If you skip the basics, you are not ambitious, you are unreliable. If you cannot be trusted with the smallest commitments, you cannot be trusted with larger ones, not by others, and more importantly, not by yourself. Every skipped small task damages your internal credibility. You may think it does not matter because no one sees it, but you see it. Your nervous system sees it. Your future decisions are shaped by it. When you repeatedly break small promises, your brain learns to doubt you. And once that doubt sets in, discipline becomes harder and harder to access. You start needing motivation. You start negotiating with yourself. You start looking for shortcuts, all because you refuse to respect the small things. Self-respect is not something you think your way into. It is something you earn, quietly, slowly, through follow-through. No one owes it to you. No achievement grants it automatically. You build it yourself, one kept promise at a time, and the smallest promises are the most powerful because they are the hardest to fake. Here is the rule you need to accept. The smaller the task, the more mandatory it becomes, the less impressive it feels, the more important it is to complete it. The tasks that irritate your ego are the exact tasks that rebuild your discipline when something feels too small to matter. That is your signal. That is the work you do first. Do not upgrade the task to make it feel meaningful. Do not add complexity. Do not wait to do it properly. Do not delay execution until it feels satisfying. That is ego talking. That is avoidance disguised as standards. You are not chasing excellence. You are avoiding completion. Completion matters more than comfort. Completion matters more than pride. Completion matters more than how you feel about the work. From this point forward, you operate under a new rule every day. You choose one small task, one task that will not impress anyone, one task that will not get you praise, one task that feels almost too basic to count, and you do it fully, cleanly, without cutting corners. You do not post about it. You do not explain it. You do not look for acknowledgement. You finish it because you said you would. That is all. You are not allowed to make the task bigger to feel important. You are not allowed to abandon it because it feels unsatisfying. You are not allowed to wait until you can do it perfectly. The standard is simple. Do what you said, when you said you would, at the level you committed to. Nothing more. Nothing less. If your ego resists, that is confirmation you are on the right path. If part of you feels annoyed, bored, or unseen, good. That means the task is doing its job. The goal is not to feel proud. The goal is to become reliable. Pride comes later. Reliability comes first. This is how discipline becomes stable, not through intensity, not through inspiration, but through humility, through repetition, through quiet execution. Over time, your brain begins to trust you again. Decisions become easier. Action becomes automatic. You stop needing emotional permission to move. You stop negotiating. You simply do what is required. And something else happens. Once you are consistent with small work, you earn the right to carry more responsibility, not because someone rewards you, but because you can handle it, because you have proof, because you have built internal evidence that you do not abandon yourself when the task is boring or inconvenient. Self-respect does not come from big moments. It comes from invisible ones, moments where you could have skipped, moments where no one would have known, moments where you chose to act anyway. Those moments stack, and when they stack long enough, discipline stops feeling forced. It becomes who you are. Remember this. People who keep their word when no one is watching are dangerous in the best way. They are stable. They are grounded. They are free from the chaos of emotional decision-making. And that freedom starts with small work. Self-respect does not come from big achievements. It comes from small promises kept, over and over again. Chapter 6. Absolute Ownership. Life is not fair. That is not an opinion. That is the operating system of reality. Some people start ahead. Some people get support. Some people face obstacles they did not choose. None of that changes the final rule. The results of your life are your responsibility, not your fault, but your responsibility. Confusing those two ideas is how people stay stuck. Fault looks backward. Responsibility points forward. You may not have caused the problem in front of you, but you are still the one who has to deal with it the moment you refuse that truth. Progress stops. You already know what needs to be done. That part is not missing. What is missing is ownership. You hesitate when conditions are not ideal. You slow down when others make mistakes. You pause when outcomes are disappointing. Each time something goes wrong, your focus shifts outward. The environment, the system, the timing, the people involved, and while you are busy explaining why things did not work, action disappears. Blame creates distance between you and responsibility. Distance creates delay. Delay breaks promises. And every broken promise reinforces the identity of someone who does not follow through. Not because they are incapable, but because they keep handing control away. There are lies that sound reasonable. They feel justified. They protect the ego. They also destroy momentum. If the situation were better, I would act. If they had done their part, this would have worked. This was not my fault, so I should not have to carry it. These statements feel logical. They are also traps. Fault and responsibility are not the same thing. You can be innocent and still be responsible. You can be right and still be stuck. Ownership begins the moment you stop asking who caused the problem and start asking what you will do next. Absolute ownership means this. Everything that affects your life is yours to handle, not to complain about, not to analyze endlessly. To handle. You do not look for a villain. You do not wait for fairness. You do not ask for permission. You act. Ownership is not about control over others. It is about control over response. When you own the problem, you own the power to fix it. When you refuse ownership, you give that power away. That trade always costs more than you think. This principle does not begin with big decisions. It begins with small, uncomfortable ones. Ownership is built at the bottom, not the top. It starts with tasks that feel beneath you. Tasks no one praises. Tasks no one sees. Tasks that do not move the scoreboard in obvious ways. These are not punishments. They are tests. If you cannot be trusted with the small, quiet responsibilities, you cannot be trusted with larger ones. Avoiding small work is not a sign of ambition. It is a sign of weak ownership. Every time you skip a small responsibility, you teach yourself something. You teach yourself that standards are flexible, that excuses work, that effort is optional when no one is watching. Every time you complete a small responsibility without recognition, you teach yourself the opposite. You teach yourself that your word matters, that action does not require applause, that you can be relied on. Ownership grows from evidence. Evidence comes from repeated follow-through on small commitments. Listen carefully. Complaining is not harmless. Explaining is not neutral. Every time you say because of them or because of the situation, you are transferring control. You are saying that something outside of you gets to decide whether action happens. That is a surrender. Absolute ownership reverses that habit. It removes the question of blame entirely. It replaces it with one question only. What is the next step I can take that is within my control from this point forward? Remove one phrase from your vocabulary. Why? Why did this happen? Why did they fail? Why did this go wrong? Why questions keep you stuck in analysis? Replace it with a different question. What is the next step? Not the perfect step, not the strategic step. The next one, the one you can take now. Write it down. Do it. No negotiation. Do not try to fix other people. Do not wait for them to change. Do not waste energy correcting behavior you do not control. Your job is not to manage the world. Your job is to manage your actions inside it. Ownership is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shows up quietly and consistently in how you respond when things go wrong, especially when no one is watching. There will always be reasons to hesitate. There will always be explanations that sound smart, but none of them build credibility. Ownership does. But action does. When you choose to take responsibility, even when it feels unfair, something shifts. You move from reaction to control, from frustration to execution, from waiting to moving. That shift is the beginning of freedom. Today, identify one problem you have been avoiding because it was easier to blame than to act. Do not solve the whole thing. Do not plan 10 steps ahead. Identify one action that is fully within your control, the smallest one. Do it today. Do it quietly. Do it completely. No explanation, no announcement, just execution. Then repeat tomorrow, and the day after, one small action, one owned responsibility. 7 days in a row, not to impress anyone, to prove something to yourself, that when something needs to be handled. You handle it, that when a promise is made. It is kept, that when responsibility appears. You do not flinch. This is what absolute ownership looks like. No drama, no excuses, no delays. You stop asking who is responsible. You become responsible. And when you stop blaming, you take control back. Control is not comfort. Control is not ease. Control is power. And that power is what people mean when they talk about freedom. Chapter 7. When you want to quit. That is the identity test. There will be days when you are tired, days when you are bored, days when everything in you wants to stop. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. And it is not a warning sign. It is a required phase of discipline. Not an exception, a certainty. The real mistake is believing that these moments mean something is wrong. They do not. They mean the process is working. The lie you have been taught is that wanting to quit is a signal to rest, reset, or step back. It is not. Wanting to quit is the point where identity is tested, not when things feel good, not when progress is visible, but when effort feels heavy and reward feels absent. That is where discipline either becomes real or collapses completely. Pay attention to the pattern. When energy is high, you show up. When motivation is present, you perform. But when fatigue arrives, you slow down. When boredom settles in, you negotiate. And when discomfort stays longer than expected, you stop. This is not random behavior. This is conditioning. You have trained yourself to keep promises only when conditions are favorable. And that training shows up exactly at the breaking point. The breaking point is not the moment you fail. It is the moment you decide whether your word still matters. When you stop at that moment, you do more damage than you realize. You do not just skip a task. You confirm a rule to your brain: commitments are optional under pressure. That rule is learned fast, and once learned, it spreads to every area of your life. You do not lose personal credibility on easy days. Easy days do not test anything. Anyone can show up when things feel light. Credibility is lost on hard days, on the days when continuing costs something, on the days when stopping would feel reasonable. That is where trust in yourself either solidifies or breaks permanently. You must remove another illusion now. The breaking point is not a signal to stop. The feeling of wanting to quit is not a safety alert. It is not your body protecting you. It is not your mind giving wise advice. It is resistance, pure and simple. Resistance to effort, resistance to discomfort, resistance to becoming someone who does not depend on feeling good to act. At the breaking point, behavior is under examination. Nothing else matters there, not intention, not history, not future plans. Only what you do in that moment. If you stop, you confirm the old identity, the identity that acts only when it is easy, the identity that needs emotional support to function. If you continue, you create evidence for a new identity, one that holds under pressure. This is why the rule of this chapter is precise. This is not the moment to push harder. This is not the moment to increase ambition. This is not the moment to prove strength. This is the moment to keep your word. Nothing more, nothing less. Discipline does not demand heroics. It demands consistency. On easy days, progress feels like growth. On hard days, progress feels like obedience. The action does not change. Only the feeling does. And feeling is irrelevant here. When discomfort rises, you do not renegotiate the agreement. You do not revise the plan. You do not search for motivation. You execute the commitment as defined. That is all. Understand this clearly. You do not need more energy at the breaking point. You do not need better conditions. You do not need encouragement. You need compliance. Compliance with the decision you already made when you were thinking clearly. The discipline you built earlier exists for this moment, not the other way around. Responsibility cannot be outsourced here. No one makes you stop. No situation forces you to quit. Circumstances apply pressure, but they do not choose for you. The choice is always yours, every time. At the breaking point, you decide which identity survives, the one that breaks under strain, or the one that holds. Identity is not built through intention. It is not built through planning. It is locked in through behavior. When quitting feels justified, every time you continue when you want to stop, you add one piece of evidence that you are reliable. That evidence compounds, quietly, powerfully. And once enough evidence exists, self-trust returns. Here is the operational rule when the urge to stop appears. You do one more unit of action, not more than planned. Not a heroic push, one small step beyond the minimum you committed to. Then you stop. No extensions, no extra goals, one unit. That is it. This rule matters because it prevents two failures at once. It prevents quitting and it prevents overcompensation. Overcompensation is just ego trying to feel strong again. Discipline does not care about feeling strong. It cares about being consistent. The one more rule keeps action precise and repeatable, even under pressure. Measure this behavior accurately. Action must happen at the exact moment quitting appears, not later, not after rest, not tomorrow. In that moment, that is where the identity lock happens. When you act there, the promise is preserved. When you skip it, the promise is broken at the worst possible time. This chapter is not about winning. It is not about progress you can see. It is not about results you can show. It is about sealing a contract with yourself under stress. Most people never do this. That is why most people never trust themselves. They live in a cycle of intention and regret. You are ending that cycle here, not by feeling better, but by behaving differently at the exact point where you used to collapse. That moment defines you more than any success ever will. When you reach the breaking point again, and you will. Remember this. This is not a crisis. This is the test, not of strength, not of talent, of identity. Do one more unit, keep the promise, and stop. That is enough. This is not the moment of victory. This is the moment identity gets locked. Chapter 8. When you don't see results, don't break the contract. Results do not arrive on your emotional schedule. They do not show up when you feel ready, confident, or motivated. They show up when the work has been done long enough to deserve them. The silent phase is not a mistake. It is not a warning sign. It is the price of progress. Most people fail here, not because they chose the wrong direction, but because they panic when the scoreboard stays empty. They mistake silence for failure, and in that moment, they tear up the contract they signed with themselves. Understand this clearly. Stopping because you do not see results is not patience running out. It is trust collapsing. Not trust in the process, trust in yourself. Every commitment you make to yourself is a contract. It is not symbolic. It is not motivational language. It is an agreement that says, I will do this action, at this frequency, for this duration. Regardless of short-term feedback, when you quit early because the reward has not arrived yet, you teach your mind a brutal lesson. You teach it that your word only matters when it pays quickly. Many people do the right thing for a while. They show up. They follow the plan. They keep the rhythm. Then, nothing happens. No praise, no visible improvement, no external signal that confirms they are on the right path. Doubt creeps in. Not loud doubt, quiet doubt. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I should adjust. Maybe there's a smarter way. That doubt does not feel like quitting. It feels like being reasonable. But what usually follows is predictable. The pace slows. The standards soften. One session is skipped, then another. The contract is broken. Not with drama, but with excuses. The damage does not come from the missed result. It comes from the broken agreement. When you stop because you do not see progress, your brain records a rule effort is optional unless rewarded. From that moment on, every future commitment is weaker. Even when you choose the right action again, a part of you does not believe you will stay. You have trained yourself to leave when things go quiet. That is how personal credibility dies, not in loud failures, but in invisible exits. There is an illusion that must be destroyed here. The illusion says that doing the right thing should quickly feel satisfying, that progress should be obvious, that discipline should come with feedback to keep you going. Reality does not work this way. There is no universal rule that says work today earns results today. Most progress accumulates below the surface, where you cannot measure it and cannot show it. If you insist on measuring progress only through early outcomes, you will sabotage yourself every time. The correct principle is simple and non-negotiable. Keep the contract, not the emotion, not the mood, not the hope, the contract. A contract does not care how you feel. It does not respond to boredom. It does not negotiate with frustration. Discipline is not about feeling confident that results will come. Discipline is about continuing the correct action while the scoreboard remains empty. Reliable people are not the ones who feel encouraged. They are the ones who keep their word when nothing is happening. Anyone can stay committed when the feedback is positive. Anyone can work harder when results appear. The test of credibility is what you do when there is no signal, no reward, and no confirmation. That is where contracts are either honored or destroyed. When you say, "I stopped because I wasn't seeing anything," you are not stating a fact. You are making a decision. No one broke your contract for you. No one forced you to quit. You chose to invalidate your own agreement. Ownership means accepting that truth without drama. It means recognizing that no one is responsible for keeping you consistent. No one is coming to verify that you are on the right path. The responsibility to continue exists even when the path feels unrewarding. This is why your behavior during the invisible phase matters more than any visible win. During this phase, you must simplify, not escalate. You do not raise the difficulty to feel productive. You do not change the goal to chase excitement. You return to the smallest version of the commitment you originally made and you execute it cleanly. Same time, same action, same standard. No adjustments for mood, no upgrades for enthusiasm, no downgrades for fatigue. Small work becomes critical here, not because it creates results, but because it preserves the contract. When progress is invisible, small actions are easier to keep consistent. That consistency is not about efficiency, it is about identity. You are proving, quietly and repeatedly, that your word does not depend on feedback. That proof rebuilds internal trust, and internal trust is the only currency discipline runs on. There are rules you must follow if you want to survive this phase. Do not check results daily. Daily evaluation creates emotional noise and invites doubt. Measure only one thing, whether the action happened or not. Keep the rhythm fixed. Do not increase intensity when you feel excited. Do not reduce it when you feel tired. Stability matters more than volume. Finish the number of repetitions you committed to, even if nothing seems to change. When the work feels too small to matter, that is exactly when it matters most. The smaller the action, the fewer excuses you have to skip it, and the fewer excuses you accept, the stronger your contract becomes. You are not doing small work to feel progress. You are doing it to maintain integrity. Results are not the immediate goal. Credibility is, some days will feel pointless, some days will feel like regression. That does not give you permission to renegotiate. On days when you see nothing, you do the work anyway. On days when motivation drops, the rules stay the same. This is how standards are built, not through intensity, but through refusal to change the agreement. Eventually, results do arrive, they always do. Not because you chased them, but because you stayed long enough to deserve them. When they arrive, they are not fragile, they are supported by behavior that has already been tested in silence. That is why they last. There are no exceptions to this pattern. People who keep the contract win. People who break it early repeat the cycle forever. So remember this. Slow results are not betraying you. You betray yourself when you stop. Keep the contract. Keep the rhythm. Keep the small work. Do not ask for proof. Do not demand reassurance. Do not look for signs. Do what you said you would do. For as long as you said you would do it, that is the entire system. Do it long enough, and results happen. There is no other way. Chapter 9. Discipline is a standard, not inspiration. Most people believe they fail because they cannot stay focused. That is not true. Focus is not what collapses first. Standards do. You do not lose discipline because you are tired. You lose discipline the moment you allow yourself to break your own rules. Fatigue does not destroy discipline. Permission does. Every time you say just this once, you teach yourself something dangerous. You teach yourself that the line can move. And once the line moves, it never stops moving on its own. You already do many things right. That is what makes this problem harder to see. You still show up sometimes. You still make progress when conditions feel decent. But your effort is conditional. You work when you feel okay. You push when resistance is low. On days that feel heavy, you loosen the rules. A small exception here, a small delay there. One shortcut, one excuse, one today only. Each of these feels harmless in isolation. Together, they quietly dismantle your standards. Over time, your word loses weight. Your decisions lose authority. And every next decision becomes harder than the last. People like to believe flexibility makes them sustainable. They tell themselves being strict is dangerous. That rigidity leads to burnout. That a little self-reward keeps things balanced. These ideas sound reasonable. They are also the fastest way to teach yourself how to quit. Exceptions do not make you resilient. They train you to break your own structure. Every exception is a rehearsal. The more often you practice breaking the rule, the easier it becomes to break it again. Discipline does not collapse during big failures. It collapses during small permissions you allow without noticing. This is the shift that matters. Discipline is not something you try to maintain with effort. Discipline is a standard you refuse to violate. You do not wake up every day deciding whether you will be disciplined. You wake up inside a system where certain behaviors are simply not allowed. There is no debate. There is no emotional vote. Standards do not care how you feel. They exist precisely to protect you when your feelings are unreliable. When discipline is treated as inspiration, it becomes fragile. Inspiration comes and goes. Standards remain. A standard is not something you negotiate with. It is something you live inside of. You are not trying to stay disciplined. You are living according to rules you have already accepted. Once this shift happens, discipline stops feeling like pressure. It becomes structure, and structure creates stability. The real test of standards never shows up in big moments. It shows up in small, unglamorous situations. In the task that feels beneath you. In the habit no one sees. In the detail you are tempted to skip because it seems insignificant. This is where standards either live or die. When you allow yourself to cut corners on small things, your brain learns that standards are optional. And once they are optional, they will be broken again under more pressure later. People think standards collapse at the top. They do not. They collapse at the bottom. They collapse in the smallest actions you allow yourself to ignore. This is why humility matters here. Doing small work consistently is not about productivity. It is about integrity. It is about proving to yourself that your rules apply even when no one is watching. Even when the task feels trivial, even when the reward is invisible. Ownership here is absolute. No one forces you to lower your standards. No one makes you break your rules. Every time you say today doesn't count, you are choosing to weaken your own structure. Responsibility means accepting that every small violation teaches your brain how to treat your future decisions. When standards are broken by choice, control is lost by choice. The correction is simple, but it is not easy. You must define your standards clearly. Not vague intentions, not emotional goals. Clear yes or no rules. Rules without gray zones. If a behavior is part of your standard, it happens. If it is not, it does not. You do not adjust these rules based on mood. You do not revise them based on energy. You follow them because they are the standard. Every decision you face should be filtered through one question only. Does this action reinforce my standard or weaken it? Not do I feel like it. Not will this feel good today. Reinforce or weaken, build or erode. There is no neutral choice. Every action trains you, either toward consistency or toward collapse. When a standard is threatened, there is no discussion. You do not negotiate. You do not justify. You return to the smallest correct action that fits the rule. You do the minimum required to stay within your standard. You do not need to win the day. You need to protect the rule. Standards survive through consistency, not intensity. This is why small actions matter so much. Choose one small behavior you tend to overlook, one task you often excuse yourself from because it feels unimportant. That is where your standard must live. Bring that action under the rule. Do it daily, without debate, without drama. This is not about making progress. This is about closing loopholes. The fewer loopholes you allow, the stronger your discipline becomes. Over time, something shifts. Decisions become simpler. There is less friction, less internal argument. You stop needing motivation because the rule already decided for you. Your mind stops searching for excuses because none are allowed. This is not rigidity. This is relief. Structure reduces cognitive load. Standards remove uncertainty. When you know what is allowed and what is not, action becomes automatic. People who live this way are not more talented. They are not more energized. They are simply clearer. Their standards are firm. Their rules are enforced. As a result, their behavior is stable. And stable behavior creates trust. Trust in yourself. Trust that when you decide something, it will happen. That trust is rare. And it is powerful. Discipline, when treated as a standard, stops being a daily struggle. It becomes a way of operating. You are no longer trying to be disciplined. You are simply not someone who breaks certain rules. That identity removes temptation before it starts. You do not need willpower to resist what you do not allow. This chapter is not asking you to push harder. It is asking you to allow less exception, less flexibility where it does not belong, less emotional bargaining. When you reduce the number of times you permit yourself to break the rule, discipline strengthens on its own. Focus improves as a byproduct. Consistency follows naturally. You do not need better motivation. You need fewer permissions. You do not need to feel inspired. You need to live inside standards that do not care how you feel. Discipline survives when it becomes the baseline, not the effort. And once discipline is your standard, not your inspiration, control returns to where it belongs. Chapter 10. Discipline is freedom. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel like doing. Freedom is not following impulses. Freedom is not reacting to moods, energy levels, or circumstances. Freedom is control, and control only exists when your actions obey your decisions. If you cannot control your behavior, you are not free. You are being pulled by emotion, by habit, by environment, by whatever is loudest in the moment. That is not freedom. That is drift. Most people say they want freedom, but what they really want is comfort. They want less pressure, less resistance, less effort. They want life to feel easier. And every time they choose ease over discipline, they tell themselves they are giving themselves more freedom. In reality, they are doing the opposite. They are handing control to feelings they cannot predict and situations they do not command. Over time, that trade becomes permanent. Their days stop being intentional, their actions stop being consistent, and their sense of power over their own life quietly disappears. You already know what you should be doing. That was never the problem. You have known for a long time. You have made promises to yourself before, many of them. But your actions did not follow consistently. Some days you showed up, other days you didn't. And every time that gap appeared between what you decided and what you did, something broke inside. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Doubt crept in, standards softened, self-respect weakened. And slowly, you stopped trusting yourself. Loss of freedom does not come from outside forces first. It comes from internal inconsistency, from saying one thing and doing another, from needing motivation to move, from allowing emotions to vote on decisions they should never touch. When your behavior is unstable, your life becomes unstable. When your behavior is reactive, your future becomes uncertain. That is the cost of living without discipline. Discipline does not make life smaller. It makes it manageable. It does not remove choice. It removes chaos. It does not imprison you. It releases you from weakness, the weakness of hesitation, the weakness of excuses, the weakness of waiting for the right feeling. When you remove discipline to breathe, your life fills with noise, with disorder, with dependency on things you cannot control. That is the real prison. Here is the principle that closes everything you have heard so far. When your actions happen exactly as you decided, you control yourself. When you control yourself, nothing outside you can dominate you. Discipline is not an emotion. It is a system that ensures decisions turn into behavior without negotiation. When that system is in place, you no longer need willpower. You no longer need encouragement. You no longer need belief. Action happens because it is scheduled, defined, and non-negotiable. That is freedom. Notice the difference. People without discipline rely on motivation. People with discipline rely on structure. Motivation is unstable. Structure is dependable. Motivation asks how you feel. Structure does not care. That is why discipline scales. That is why it lasts. That is why it restores control where effort never could. No one can make you disciplined. No one can keep your promises for you. No one can protect your standards when you decide to lower them. Your freedom is not granted, it is claimed. Every time you follow through when it would be easier not to, you take a piece of control back. Every time you keep a small commitment, you reclaim territory that used to be ruled by weakness. And over time, those reclaimed pieces form something solid, a life you can steer. Freedom is not built in one dramatic decision. It is built in repetition, in doing the same correct actions even when they stop feeling new, even when no one is watching, even when there is no immediate reward. That repetition is not glamorous, but it is powerful. Because consistency removes uncertainty, and uncertainty is the enemy of freedom at this point. Nothing new is required from you. You do not need another insight. You do not need another explanation. You already have the rules. Keep the discipline you have built. Keep the small tasks you committed to. Keep the standards you set without negotiation. Do not renegotiate with fatigue. Do not soften rules for comfort. Do not ask if you want to. Ask only if you decided. If the answer is yes, action follows, automatically. This is how you live from now on. Decisions first, behavior second, feelings irrelevant. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to feel strong. You do not need to feel inspired. You need to act, and when action becomes reliable. Confidence returns without effort. Self-respect rebuilds without affirmations. Freedom appears without permission. Measure your days differently, not by how you felt, not by how productive it seemed. Measure them by one question only. Did your actions match your decisions? If they did, you were free that day. If they did not, something else was in control. Understand this clearly. Discipline does not guarantee success. It guarantees control, and control is the foundation of everything else. Without it, talent is wasted. Without it, effort collapses. Without it, life is reactive. With it, you are stable, predictable, grounded. You move when you decide to move. You stop when you decide to stop. That stability is rare, and it is powerful. People who keep their word to themselves do not need motivation. They do not need reminders. They do not need permission. They operate on standards, and standards remove choice at the moment of action. There is no debate. There is only execution. That is why disciplined people appear calm. Not because life is easier for them, but because their behavior is no longer up for discussion. This is the final lock. When your behavior follows your decisions without resistance, you control yourself. When you control yourself, nothing outside you can rule your life. Only those who keep their word to themselves earn the right to control their direction. There is no shortcut. There is no alternative path. There is no softer version that works. Discipline creates control. Control creates freedom. Only those who hold that line own their life. There is no other way.